So I just got back from the theater, having watched Fantastic Four: First Steps. Um, and I've had the idea of reviewing movies I've been seeing for quite a while, and there's no particularly special reason that inclined me to start with Fantastic Four. There's no connection. I've never really had a personal history with Fantastic Four. This genuinely having been the first film I've even seen, but I'm going at it. Um, so this is the fourth or fifth film rendition there has been of the Fantastic Four, with the 2007, 2008, no, 2012 version, I'm sorry, having been probably the most known because it's more modern, with a small version ish in 2022 with John Krasinski as lead as Reed Richards. But obviously, what we're talking about is the 2025 release featuring, mainly featuring Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards and the rest of the crew. I apologize, I don't know the rest of their names. But I wanted to talk about a lot of things and then give my final take on it because if there's anything you should care about in life, it is my opinion on Marvel films in the big year of 2025. Um, Contrary to popular belief, I think that Marvel is capable of having serious conversations and themes in their films. There's been a long discussion of DC and MC in the MCU being entirely different in that the DC is darker, grittier, and if you want seriousness, you go to DC. I will concede that point. Generally, yes, especially when its most popular character is probably Batman. Most popular films are Batman films, with the Dark Knight trilogy with Christian Bale and the very successful and my favorite 2022 film featuring Robert Pattinson as the Batman, being very dark takes on the DCU. Um, and people treat the MCU as very cheesy, very comical. Like every single film is 2 hours of Robert Downey Jr. being Iron Man. Well, and I will grant you that that is Iron Man's thing. He's a smartass, but I think that MCU films are capable of being more than that. To that point, there is a dynamic in the film that shows almost a strain in the relationship between Reed and Sue. This is first shown due to Galactus' threat of invading the Earth. And his one trade, the one thing he will possibly give as a negotiation of sort, is for them to give Franklin, Reed, and Sue's child to Galactus to free him of his ever present hunger, and then he will spare Earth. Reed, being the person who he is, a problem solver, thinker of all possible options, thinks, he ponders the idea of actually doing that. This is done in a scene where all the characters are discussing the almost revolution against the Fantastic Four following their announcement that they rejected the offer. Um, and Reed at the table says it's, I understand it's ethical, it's possible, and it's fair. And rather than what I took it as on myself, I even the worst things that I wouldn't ever think about actually pondering, I will always think about why it could be rationalized to understand someone else's perspective. And I feel like that's what Reed was doing. Maybe not, maybe genuinely in his problem solver mind, and maybe to actually show a flaw of his character, he considered it. He considered trading one life to save 9 billion. Well, it's the '60s, so maybe it's closer to 7 or 8 billion. Uh, though I mean it's a universe with fucking flying cars and superheroes, so who knows? Maybe it's still 9 billion. Um, but Sue does not take too kindly to this and leaves the room to go take care of the baby, and they have an argument where they both yell at each other. And it's a very well written scene that actually shows Reed getting slightly angry, which is not something you see. He's usually very passive, and it shows a very strained relationship, almost like kind of on the edge relationship between Reed and Sue that obviously is a very serious topic if you look at it from the perspective of a marriage collapsing due to the habits of one that goes almost too far. Example, Reed being too much of a problem solver, he genuinely considers the idea of sacrificing their child to save the earth, something Sue is incredibly against. And I think that's just one of the many examples that shows the MCU is capable of doing serious topics. Um, and I really wanted to give it credit because I've heard repeatedly that the MCU is cheesy, comical, never serious, always going for funny one-liners. Which is actually a perfect segue into our next topic, is Ben and Johnny's relationship dynamic, and by that I mean their friendship dynamic, because I'm not going to headcanon these two. Well, Johnny's very straight. That's kind of his cliche character. Excuse me. Ben and Johnny have a basically anytime they have screen time together, they're just rage baiting each other, and I think it's some of the funniest shit I've seen in a good while, and I like it. It's really well done. It's not forced. It feels natural. It feels like two friends giving each other shit constantly, and it's very well done, and it got a few giggles out of me. Um, and there's no real in-depth conversation I'm going to give that like I did to the last topic. I just wanted to go over that and say that the comedic writing between the Thing and the Human Torch is very well done, and honestly, if you like comedy, I think you'll like that dynamic. It feels very natural. I have multiple friendship dynamics that feel exactly like that. Um, Third topic is the morality of Reed giving the child to Galactus. Um, Obviously, a big turning point in the film is Sue finally conceding the idea of using Franklin to win. She never wanted to put Franklin in any sort of position to be given to Galactus, but after the idea of using the bridge, which is a device they were going to use all across the entire globe to teleport Earth into a suitable position, incredibly far away from Galactus, where he couldn't find it for millions of years, so that they'd be safe. That failed, and as a last-ditch effort, they know that they can use the one bridge left in New York, Times Square, to bait Galactus in and teleport him somewhere else rather than the Earth. And that's the big turning point. My point is, how moral is it for Reed to have decided early on to sacrifice the child to give to Galactus to save Earth? It depends. I originally, whenever it was discussed, whenever Galactus stated that the baby was powerful of being enough to end his endless hunger, it felt to me like the child might die and that Galactus would finally rest, which I can almost see as morally acceptable. Which, yes, it's trading a life for a life in the very base scheme of things. He is killing a baby so he can rest a peaceful life. But you also have to take into account that they'd be doing it to save the entirety of Earth, which at that point, I immediately made the decision that I would have done it. I would have traded off the baby. But the thing they discuss, and I mean, there's no other reason for them to discuss it. The thing that they talk about is that he would have made the baby his protege, as in the baby would have carried on this never-ending hunger and would go on to destroy worlds. In that case, it is smart to keep the baby because the baby is so powerful. You don't want him to end up on the other side just to temporarily save Earth and lose your own child. So, all in all, I can't hold a grudge to Reed for even pondering the idea. I don't think he ever genuinely pondered it. I think he thought about why it would be a good decision, and that was to the extent of it. And I think if it weren't a situation where the baby would go on to be the second Galactus, it would be completely morally justifiable. Fourth, the appearance of Galactus in the MCU. Now, obviously, I'm younger. I'm 17. There's been plenty of Marvel films before my time, before the beginning of the MCU, which began with the Iron Man films. Um, and to my knowledge, there is zero, at least in the MCU, maybe before like Galactus existed, but the MCU, Galactus has never made a big appearance on screen. This is, to my knowledge, his film debut, and it's done incredibly well. I am not a comic book nerd. I don't want nerd to come off as antagonistic. I am a huge nerd myself. I just don't read comics because it's an incredibly hard thing to get into, as in you have to know where to start, and every fucking comic book fan is going to have a different idea on where to start, which universe to start, on which characters to start. So I've never done anything Galactus, and this was a very cool way to be introduced to him. All my prior knowledge was that he is a planet-eating god with almost limitless power, and that's been shown time and time again. And he was presented as a god, as a planet-eating god. His design felt incredible. The visual effects that were done with him, with his eyes, water falling off of him as he invades New York, was incredibly well done. He looked good. He honestly had a pretty cool like arc, as in motivation. He had a He wasn't doing it because he was purely evil. He was doing it because he has this unsatiable hunger, this force within him that just never fucking stops. But the biggest thing is that he wanted Earth so bad, especially after he learned that the child could end his hunger so he could go off somewhere and live peacefully. Or just die. I don't know. And it was a good debut of his character for the MCU. I don't know if it'll return or not. It's bound to, because it's Galactus. And they didn't say they killed him. They just sent him off somewhere that would take him millions of years to become a threat again, because he's stranded in the middle of nowhere without his ship. Fifth, the teasing of Doctor Doom entering the MCU and Fantastic Four entering the MCU as a whole in the Avengers Doomsday. After the movie ended, me and my father, well, me more consciously, I think he just sat there because I was sitting there. I knew that all MCU films, a lot of them, have end credit scenes, most of them being teasers for future films. And the teaser for this was a unmasked, not on camera, but you can see he was unmasked, a unmasked Doctor Doom almost caressing Franklin, the child, which is a hint to the first MCU appearance of Doctor Doom. Also RDJ, Robert Downey Jr.'s appearance as Doctor Doom, which is an entirely different discussion on if that is a good thing at all. But that was a good teaser. I've never... Same thing with Galactus. I'm not a comic book nerd, and there's been no huge Doctor Doom appearances in the MCU or Marvel films in general. So this is a good way to introduce him. I liked it. It felt cool. It presents the character in a way that is new for people, especially children that are not very familiar with the MCU. But my theater got quite a reaction, which I always love. I love the energy and the feeling of theaters. I saw Deadpool and Wolverine day one, and like I could tell I was in a theater full of really fucking comic book nerds, which I fucking love. I'm not making fun of them. That was awesome to see them like react to things. Like, small thing, when Blade entered the screen on Deadpool and Wolverine, that theater went ballistic, and I loved it. It's the energy of like people in their realm just being happy and seeing the callbacks is incredible. I love that. It's part of the theater energy. And I got that a bit with this film. And there's also people being first exposed to things, like they didn't even know Doctor Doom was a character, but they saw the teaser of him. You can see the mask, his cloak, and you can know that he's going to be a part of the next film, because it also states after that little thing, with a flash to black and text, Fantastic Four will return in Avengers Doomsday, a teaser for the next Avengers film that obviously Fantastic Four will be a part of, which is segueing their presence into the MCU as a whole. They're not going to be in their own isolated realm like some other movies, where they're just going to be kind of doing their own fights. They're going to join the rest of the MCU in a big Avengers film, which is really cool because Avengers is generally known as the film where everyone comes together. like Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America. They all had their own movies, and they came together for the series of the Avengers films. Which is really cool to see the Fantastic Four get more attention. Pedro Pascal did an incredible job of being Reed, which is an entirely different discussion that I can't get to yet because it's on the list of things I need to cover. Identity change of the Silver Surfer. This is gonna be a really short one. I don't really fucking care, but people were kind of angry that the Silver Surfer is a woman now, or it was a woman because she got fucking bitched. Silver Surfer in the comics, and I'm sure for movie appearances, is a man, and has been a man for a very long time. In this film, it's a woman. I don't care. It's a big nothing burger. They didn't brutalize the character. It actually had a pretty cool arc. She expresses guilt over her service to Galactus. It's well done. I don't care. I'm not going to complain. I'm not ever going to say, I think this was better. I think this was worse. I don't care. I'm also not knowledgeable, so take my word with a grain of, I don't know, well, probably 60 pounds of salt. Johnny's personality. Johnny's personality is like a really cliche misogynist type character, but minus the misogyny. He falls for the big thing is he loves women. He falls for them too easy, with a bit of a joke being that everyone kind of mocks him for an interaction with the Silver Surfer, and that everyone assumes he thinks they had a moment when really he's just an idiot at using words. And it works well. Usually I don't like that cliche because it's just boring and overplayed, but Johnny does it right. Also, I have to let it pass because it was a character that was written in the 60s or earlier. I don't know the origin of the Fantastic Four, not a comic book nerd, but almost every comic book character was written in the 60s, 70s, 50s, something like that, even earlier. I know the Batman dates way back. So I think his personality was done correctly. He had the correct moments of seriousness, and it wasn't constantly like women, sexism, flirting. He had his own uses. He was the one who decoded the language of the Silver Surfer and utilized her human emotions and the guilt she felt over assisting Galactus in consuming planets. Next, the convincing writing. I will say almost all of the writing in the entire movie felt natural. The banter between Reed, no, not Reed, sorry. The banter between Johnny and Ben felt incredibly natural. That's the way I would speak with my friends. The arguments between Sue and Reed feel incredibly realistic, having seen multiple arguments between couples in general in like in realism movies that aren't documentaries, almost like reality TV, except not fake reality TV. It's actually arguments. And I have parents, I've had friends who I've had the privilege of watching them argue. It feels real. The arguments were genuine, and there was the genuine moments of like one of them not really wanting to overstep bounds, but being angry. The fear of saying something that could genuinely hurt the other person and erode the marriage. The writing all felt incredible, except for one thing that I will comment on later. Pedro Pascal's acting. Pedro Pascal has had a lot of big roles lately, namely Joel in The Last of Us. Incredible performance, by the way. The Mandalorian, incredible performance, by the way. And then this. And in this, I think he did incredibly well. Reed is a very cool character. I think I like the personality of Reed in this film rather than, and this sounds stupid, but it's my only other exposure to Mr. Fantastic, Marvel Rivals, where he's way more quippy and comic book character-y, which I don't like. I like the more slow, methodical, almost timid version of him. It's more human. It's more of a methodical, incredibly knowledgeable man, but he's not like only that. It's not like Vision, who thinks way too seriously. Vision as in the physical embodiment of Jarvis that we see in the later Avengers films. He still has a humor side to him, but he's a methodical man. He thinks of everything as objectively and as logically as he can, which is good. I think it's cool. It's way less quippy. He doesn't do any like cliche comic book shit in the film. I liked his acting. I liked his writing. It was all super good. Um, to that, there's a lack of presentation in his powers. You didn't really see him do it much, as in like we saw Johnny, the Human Torch. He uses powers a lot throughout the film. He got a lot more moments, and you got to see those. I like a big thing in superhero films lately because people have been praising it so much is watching superheroes use their powers casually. Um, like Johnny uses powers whenever there's a big arc where the entire world is saving power to charge up all the bridges. And during night, while he's deciphering Silver Surfer's language, he uses his hand as a torch, as a flashlight, to light the room so he can decipher the languages or the language without needing to consume power. Which makes him useful and also builds him character. You see his power in action. You rarely get to see that with Reed. You get a few instances of it. You don't get many of it. Basically, the ones I remember are him moving throughout the ship, the end action scene with Galactus, the beginning where like they're introducing the Fantastic Four with the whole like the commercial shit on the Ted Gilbert show or whatever his name is. And you don't get much other than that. Everyone else's powers were shown extensively, but his wasn't, which isn't a 9 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10 moment. It's just kind of I would have liked to see his powers more. And then the last topic of all is the cliche ending. Big spoilers. Whenever I post a video to the server, I'm gonna spoiler it, but the big spoilers here is the ending itself. The ending is a fake out death with Sue having really pushed her powers to stop Galactus and push him into the bridge portal to send him God knows where. And she dies for a minute. She actually flatlines. She is dead. And there's this big emotional moment where everyone's kind of grieving, and Reed, in desperation, keeps on trying to give her CPR and refuses to admit that she's dead. And the baby, being all powerful, God almost, revives her by like being placed on her chest and kind of sitting there, and then she comes back to life, which I knew was gonna happen. I knew it because like it's a superhero film, they're not gonna kill off one of the main characters, especially whenever they need to make a film later on, which is going to be Avengers Doomsday in a couple of years with the Fantastic Four. So they can't kill him off. I knew that, but it was such a cliche way to do it. I would have preferred her have a close moment where like Reed save her himself, or her kind of being clinging onto life and redoing it. I don't like her dying and the baby just saving her. I don't like it. It's a fake out. It's a really cheap cop out. I don't like it. It's fine. I don't hate it. I just would have preferred something more clever done. That way, it can help Marvel beat the really cheesy comic book allegations. That said, that's all the topics I wanted to cover, and a lot of this list I know may come off as gripes. I loved this film. It was super good, and for that reason, I think I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. And that's not on the Marvel scale. That's genuine movies scale. I really liked this, and dare I say, I liked it more than Thunderbolts. Don't get me wrong. I know you're sitting there thinking, Spectre, you're a Bucky fan. How could you possibly? What gives you the nerve to rate Fantastic Four above Thunderbolts? And I gotta say, Thunderbolts is more closer to your cliche Marvel action film. There's way less serious tones. Don't get me wrong, it covers depression, self-loathing, and suicidal ideation in a good way, but it's done way less. Those important messages were all fit into the last minute of Thunderbolts, and the important messages of Fantastic Four were more throughout the entire film. The writing was good. I liked the characters. Don't get me wrong, I love Bucky, but the relationship dynamic between Ben and Johnny there's not one I remember existing in Thunderbolts, except for people giving John Walker shit, which was really funny. I'll give you that. That said, Fantastic Four First Steps gets an 8 out of 10. I will probably do this more often. I've always wanted to, and this is probably going to be the big push to make me to get me to do it more often. So that said, I will start reviewing more movies more often. And if you want me to review something, I don't know why. Of course, you want me. I know I'm so very great. My opinion, it changes what you think about things. I understand. So if you have anything you want me to review, just let me know, and I probably will. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you to fuck off. I might, because that's kind of what I do, but I'll probably do it anyway. Thank you for watching, and this has been the review.